Welcome to the T49 review. I'm platooned up with Wu 13 Do from F-15 and we're here to see what we can do on this map. The T49 is the top tier American light tank. It's the end of the line tank for them, and it's a fun vehicle to play, but it's also highly inconsistent. And the reason why it's inconsistent is that it has two guns. It has this 152mm derp gun, and it's got a 90mm gun. But the problem with the 90mm gun is that it's only viable with premium ammo. It's actually not working with the regular ammo, which pretty much means that you have to use this 152mm gun or basically shoot gold all the time. But the 152mm gun is what makes this tank fun to play and frustrating at the same time. The problem is that it's inconsistent because the dispersion values on the gun are really bad. I mean, when you move the turret, you can see the aiming circle grow really fast, but also when you move the tank even slightly, the aiming goes completely wild, so you actually have to sit still and aim this gun for far too long. And that is a problem with a light tank, because these things are very fragile, which means that you actually have to pop out of cover, take a shot and move back into cover. You can't sit still all the time aiming, and that makes this tank a bit of a problem to use. Now, it's also one of the reasons why I'm sitting here at the moment, because if I would have gone hill with this tank, I would probably either be the first one spotted, or out of all tanks on the hill, the enemy would have focused me because I've got no armor. This gun though, I can say that one of the advantages of the T49 and the 152mm gun is that it doesn't give a shit about the matchmaking. Even against tier 10s, you can do quite alright per shot damage. The problem with this 152mm gun as well is that the HE shells, well, obviously they have no penetration, but they also don't do consistent damage. I mean, on average though, you can expect on like a tier 8 plus heavy tank, you can expect somewhere in between 200 and 300 damage per shot. But the problem is that you have something like a 20-second reload, so the DPM of this gun, the effective DPM of this gun, is just horrible. It doesn't make it any less fun to play when you hit. You can see there 314 damage. The last shot on the T44 was 422 damage. With medium tanks, you tend to do slightly more damage because they've got thinner armor. Light tanks, if you come up against, like, for instance, a 1390, you either do like 200 or 300 damage as well, or you sort of half one-shot them. There is no consistency in this gun, which it makes the T49 a fun tank to play, but it's not a competitive light tank by any stretch of the imagination. For that, the gun just isn't good enough. That's one of the things that Wargaming needs to do to make this tank competitive, is to basically buff the aim time and fix the dispersion values of this tank, especially when rotating the turret or moving the hull. You can see the massive aim circle here. It just doesn't work. I mean, a light tank that has to sit still for this long to actually be able to shoot an enemy just isn't competitive. But I still hope that they will buff this tank in these areas, because even though it's a fun tank to play, it's just frustrating to play it as well. Even if you're on like a city map, close quarters battle, you come up behind an enemy tank, you shoot at them, and even at like 100 meters distance, 50 meters distance, your shell will just go over the target completely, not hit them, even if it's like an E100 or a mouse, and that just isn't good enough. especially not in tier 10 battles, which this tank ends up in quite frequently. Now, if you hit, even if you don't penetrate, you do damage, so that sort of makes up for it. You always do some sort of damage to the enemy tank, even if you don't penetrate, and that's an advantage compared to the other tier 8 light tanks, because they all need premium ammo pretty much for, let's say, an E100 frontally if you can't see the lower plate, whereas this tank doesn't. You will do damage, but you will spend like 20 seconds reloading, and in 20 seconds you can take a lot of damage in a light tank, so you have to play it pretty passively. Or, I mean, this tank can be played in two ways. You either do as I do now, where you play passively at the start of the match, see how it develops, and you do some long range sniping. Or if you are, for instance, on a city map and the map permits it, you basically just drive around full speed. You come up to enemies, you auto aim at them, and then you drive right up to them, and from like 20 meters distance you basically derp them in the face and then get the fuck out, just drive away. That is a fun and effective way to play this vehicle, but not all maps suit themselves for that kind of gameplay. And now here you see the AMX 3090. I'm not spending any time aiming, and I do 609 damage to him, and the gun hits, and it wasn't even fully aimed. So that's the inconsistency of this gun. But in like 70% of the cases that shot would have missed, I would have basically just died, and that was it. But in this match, it didn't. So it actually hit. And at this point in the match, the teams are pretty even. There's no one guarding the base, so I'm deciding to move this way and to try and see if I can spot something. And I find there's KR sitting in base, so I can't shoot him. There's some cover in front of him, so I need to move. I thought I would be safe in this dip, but it turns out I'm not. So I take aim, you can see the aim time, and 290 damage, there we go. So I'm taking a lot of damage, and then I notice this hill. I mean, I'm not actually going to this side of the map ever, so I sort of didn't know there was a little ridge here. It ended up saving my life, basically, but now we've got this pattern KR behind bush cover, and I can actually kill him. I've lost a lot of HP though, and I'm now sitting in base, so I'm now doing the traditional light tank thing. I'm trying to spot enemy tanks, and here comes their RU-251. I'm hoping that someone will cover me, because if he comes too close, I'm basically screwed. So shoot him, and even though that thing has hardly any armor, the shell didn't penetrate, and it only does 460 damage. Well, only does 460 damage. No other light tank does that in one shot. But I spent 20 seconds reloading, and I spent much longer aiming. My dispersion on the move is quite horrible. The mobility of the T49, it has a nice top speed, but it is a bit clumsy in the corners. So it's not that good for a light tank, but it's not bad either. But yeah, don't rely on your mobility to save you. You're also quite a huge target. I'm not shooting this lower because I'm just spot killing him. I don't want to expose myself, don't know what else is around. Move up further, and then we spot the Jagdpanzer E100. He doesn't spot us, and that's one of the other things though. The camo on this tank is quite nice, especially when firing the gun. It's a 152mm gun, but the camouflage when firing is really good in comparison. I've had T54 lightweights in my view range that when I fired at them, they didn't actually spot me, even though I was not behind proper bush cover. I'm just spotting this Jagdpanzer E100 for the team. I move back, wait for the aim time, fire and move back. So in 2 shots we've done 460 damage to this Yak Panzer in the side. The first shot was something like 100 something, and the other one was quite a nice roll, 293 on the side. But still, I mean, that's what you can sort of expect of this gun. You do about 300 damage to most tier 10 tanks, apart from the ones with space armor like the IS-7. That can be a bit more of a tricky situation. Now we've got this T-44 still over there. Don't know what he's thinking. I'm not going to take a shot because he disappears from view. I don't know what's in that base. I don't want to basically get spotted on 97 health, so I'm playing it slightly more careful now. But I mean, T49 is fun to play, definitely. But if the gun decides to not work, it's so frustrating because you miss shots that you shouldn't in a tier 8 light tank. But it's just this derp gun that makes it so inconsistent that you do miss those shots. I really hope that Wargaming buffs this gun, because I mean, and the penetration of the 90mm, because it's with both guns it's not competitive. With the 90mm it's not competitive because you have to basically use premium ammo or not do anything in the match. And with the 152, I mean, you saw that shot, it was aimed pretty well, hit nowhere near where it was supposed to hit. And with 152, it's not competitive because you miss a lot of shots, or you basically don't do any damage with them, which just isn't good enough in tier 10 matches for a tier 8 light tank. And here we've got a bad shot, 440 health, 407 damage. So yeah, stuff like that. This gun should one-shot artillery, but it doesn't. In most cases, this gun should one-shot a lot of light tanks, but it doesn't. And I mean, it's difficult because it just refuses to hit in a lot of situations, even at close range. But still, the tank is fun to play. I mean, don't expect any miracles. Don't expect to actually be competitive in this tank, unless you shoot gold ammo in the 90mm. But it's fun. Is it a good tank? Yes and no. I mean, when it works, it is a good tank. When the gun refuses to behave, it's an absolute shit tank. But it is still fun to play. Now, this was my Ace Tanker badge in it. It was actually my first Ace Tanker badge in this tank. I've played it for quite a while. I haven't played it consistently. But yeah, Ace Tanker and Confederate. Also 8600 W and 8, as well as 1323 basic speed. Lots of spotting damage. And quite nice damage output of 3000. But I mean, you can say other light tanks can do 3000 damage as well, yes, but this was quite a long match and I actually had time to reload the gun multiple times. So I think any other tier 8 light tank at this stage in the battle could have done more damage than I did in total. But I mean, yeah, it's fun to play. Give it a go if you're close to it, especially the Bulldog and a T37 in this line are really good. This is sort of a different tank, so you have to get used to it, but it is fun to play once you sort of master it and the gun behaves. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the review. If you did, feel free to rate it, subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.